again, like to the unsuspecting punter, difference between a DD clause and not on something like that is like the difference between an option. Well, it is. It's the difference between an option to purchase something and a full-blown, unconditional, unfettered commitment to purchase something. So it's all the Good morning, everybody. I don't think any of us would dispute the property market is hot right now. And with any hot market, what you see are opportunistic people trying to finagle and shoehorn unsuspecting punters into purchases which, when all things are considered, should set off alarm bells for those of us who are at the coalface and see these transactions every day. They've had a couple of instances lately we've been intimately involved with that I want to share with you, because I think there is huge value for our audience in being aware of this type of behavior and to avoid dealing with anyone that exhibits it. So the first one was a situation where there was no agent involved and a vendor land and buildings package company, I want to say coerced, it probably was coerced, our client, who should know better, he's actually a really commercial guy, into signing an agreement which obligated him to purchase land, but worse than that, had an obligation or an obligation to agree, which is actually not a legally binding or correct concept anyway, as to a further building contract. Now, the issue from there, that sounds horribly complicated, and I'm a bit wary this week, so I haven't probably explained that very eloquently. But what it means is you'd be left with a contract to purchase land, you'd be left with this land, then you had an obligation under the first land contract to actually negotiate in good faith the terms of your build contract. Now, even if you think from a legal perspective that is okay, which we don't, practically speaking, if you've bought land in contemplation of signing a building contract with the company that sold you that land, if you fall out with them later, you've got a real wrangle on your hands. But also from a practical point of view, you'd have to go and find someone else to build that, to construct the buildings for you on that land. So the whole thing could become lopsided and a pretty fraught experience. So our client was told that there was a due diligence condition. Now, Liam Kelly and I reviewed the contract. Both of us reviewed it as our normal process. Liam did all the legwork, and I gave it a helicopter view from the top. And it turned out that there was, in fact, no due diligence clause. We contacted the vendor company. Oh, yes, no, sorry, we forgot to put that in. Admittedly, they did put it in. There was no problem there. But again, like to the unsuspecting punter, difference between a DD clause and not on something like that is like the difference between an option. Well, it is. It's the difference between an option to purchase something and a full-blown, unconditional, unfettered commitment to purchase something. So it's all the difference in the world. It's not something that is left out lightly and cynically viewed, which in this case, I am taking that view, was by design. Another instance we've seen two of them in the last 3 weeks, is off the plans purchases. Now, we are highly skeptical because we've seen a lot of the carnage and dealt with on the other end of leaky buildings, but not just leaky buildings, also massively delayed projects done not really within cooey of what was designed because of some of the flexibility in these contracts. But when you're buying off the plans, you're really buying into a contractual relationship. You're almost a shareholder in a way. You have all the characteristics of a shareholder with that developer. In most cases, you won't know from a bar of soap. The main issue with that is that, unlike with bricks and mortar, which is actually exactly why property is so popular as an investment in the first place, particularly in New Zealand. Overseas, it's a different story because of what happened with the mortgage-backed securities in somewhere like the US. But in New Zealand, it's so popular because you're buying something tangible that you can live in or rent out, and you're not actually entering into a contractual arrangement dependent on contingencies happening or not happening with other human beings. So on that note, that contract needs great scrutiny, and the disparity between a good contract and a poor contract, that's to say nothing for contracts with people who are acting unethically, is just an enormous bridge between the two. So we've seen a couple of instances lately where agents have told clients, in 2 instances, this is why I've been motivated to do this video, that certain clauses were in the agreement when they clearly weren't. Now that's just really unethical. In one case, they even produced the clause afterwards saying, oh, here's the clause you can add in. And even that clause was a highly unethical clause, which had what we call a deemed acceptance provision. A deemed acceptance provision is where the lawyer acting for the purchaser, or the lawyer acting for the person whose benefit the clause was inserted, and i.e. was to protect, must give notice by a certain time, otherwise it's deemed accepted. Now, that goes against the whole rationale behind a clause for a party's protection, i.e. to protect them. So it's a way of really just hoping or giving themselves another out that if the purchaser's lawyer doesn't actually tell you in time, then that is on the purchaser's lawyer. So it's devious and it's not really backed by good principles. The second issue on that same matter was that this particular clause also had some fine print around the fact that the developer could extend out the date if within their in their reasonable view, if in their sole subjective opinion they were making reasonable progress towards the depositing of the plan. Again, that renders the whole efficacy of such a clause completely redundant, because it's no longer a fixed date where, if you agreed with a developer that if certain things weren't done by, then really speaking, it falls outside the scope of the time frame that you intended everything to happen by. So look, that's just a short video about some of the stuff to watch out for out there. Give someone like us a call immediately if you're thinking about doing something like that. I know some people watching this right now who have felt that the pain and the burn of being on the other end of this type of transaction. It can be really soul destroying for these people. It can be financially, and it can make pretty much all the difference in your life between having a good disposable income and a relatively stress-free existence, which you've worked hard for, and this overbearing monster. Every time you go into your emails, you can have contact from the body corporate about another problem and another problem, and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bills with no guarantee of getting that money back. And I just don't like seeing good people go down that path without at least go down it on a basis that is not informed, to not actually have the information in front of them from those of us at the coalface to make a proper informed decision, understanding the full risk profile on such a decision and acting accordingly. Thank you very much. And it's a bit doom and gloom, but sometimes we get ahead from not making the wrong decision. So sometimes we get ahead because we don't go down a rabbit warren, and in the long run, we actually still have our resources to go and take advantage of good opportunities that don't have such a significant downside. Thanks.